Hello everyone, this is Chetan Mehta from Requirements Wizard, and I welcome you all in today's session. Now this is a demo session, so we'll basically go through what is the role of the business analysis in any project, what is the role of the business analyst as part of the team member. So for today's meeting, for today's session, that's the agenda. We'll go through the basics of business analysis discipline. We'll also take a very close look at what is the role of the business analyst, the importance of doing the business analysis work activities on any given project. We'll also take a very close look at what are the key skills required in order to become a good BA, business analyst. We'll discuss the career prospects. So once you get a job as a business analyst, what you should be expecting in terms of pay and other role and responsibilities, and what is a roadmap. So how do you take your career to the next level once you get a role of a BA? And then we'll discuss the training program, what we offer, and some of the key highlights we have. And then you can ask any questions you have. So before I start talking about the business analysis, let's first understand what do you mean by business? So by definition, a business is any entity that is formed and administered to engage in either a commercial activities, that is to make a profit, or a non-commercial activities. Now within the non-commercial, you have two different subcategories. One is which exist to generate some revenues, but they don't make any profits. It's called not-for-profit organizations, NPOs. And then you have the charitable organizations. So quick look at each of these. So commercial entities, as I said, they are there to make profit. So there are basically three fundamental principles on which any commercial entity operates. Profit maximization first, second is cost minimization, and the third one is maximizing the shareholder value. Some of the names you can think of as like Apple, Microsoft, McDonald's, Texas Instruments, and many more. So all these companies, they exist to make profit, right? To maximize the profit, to minimize the cost, and to maximize the shareholder value if they have borrowed money from the people, from the market, in terms of stock or any other instruments. On the other side, you have the non-commercial entities. So these are the non-profit organizations which generate some revenues, but they use this revenue to achieve their goals rather than distributing them as a profit. So for example, I'll take an example of Project Management Institute, which is a very famous institute that's main goal is to promote the project management discipline. So in order to become a member, you need to pay fees. In order to attend their seminars or webinars or any conferences, meetings, you need to pay some fees. So that means they are generating some revenue and they are providing some service. But even they do have their own cost in terms of they have their own operating cost. They have their own set of people who are hired by PMI, their full-time employees, contractors who must be paid. So they have their own cost. So they charge you money. So they have a revenue. They have their own cost. And of course, they are making some money out of it. But the profit they are generating out of this entire activity is reinvested in promoting the PM discipline, project management discipline. So that's a difference between the commercial entity and an NPO. Some of the examples are United Nations Children Fund, UNICEF, NPR, National Public Radio, and many more. And then within the non-commercial, you have charitable institutes. Basically, these are like philanthropic institutes where the goal is more towards a social cause. So they generate the revenues from one source and then they supply it or they channel it in order to accomplish their goal or vision. But we'll mainly focus on the commercial side, the commercial entities, because that's where most of the jobs are. So let's now further take a very close look at what the commercial entities are. So the first thing, as I made clear, they exist for three things: profit maximization, cost minimization, and maximizing the shareholder value. Now these commercial entities, they have different departments within them. You pick any organization or any corporation, it will have its own set of departments. For example, some common departments you can think of as like production department, operations, marketing, sales, logistics, information technology, finance accounts, research and development, legal, human resources, health and safety. So these are different departments within an organization. Now this will change depending on, are you in the product or service sector, and even within the service, what kind of services you have, or product, which kind of products you sell. But typically these are the departments or units within an organization. Now within these organizations, within these departments, you have a set of processes which are being performed. When I say process, it's basically a set of activities performed within an organization to achieve a desirable output. That means a process will take some input, it will process it, and then give an output to the next process. And each department or unit will have their own set of processes. So order processing, payment processing, accounts reconciliation, inventory check, or inventory management. All these are different processes being performed within the units or departments. And then who conducts these processes, or who participates in these processes? There will be a set of people, right? Or it can be some sort of machine or a gadget or a systems application, or it can be a mix of both. It can be part of the process can be done by a human, and part of the process can be done by a system application, right? So people and machines, or as I said, system application, they will be participating in these processes, right? So it's clear. A commercial entity, you have within the commercial entity, you have different departments, units. Within the departments, you have different set of processes, and these processes are being done by people or some gadgets, machines, systems, application, and in certain cases, combination of both. Now, why do these things occur? Why do the companies or the management perform all these activities? Why do they structure their organization, have the different departments, units? They define these processes, operations, hire people, let them perform these processes. The reason why they do this is because they have some sort of vision where they want to take their organization. So they have a vision, they have a goal, and based on the goals, they have defined certain strategies. This is a very important concept. So each entity, whether it's a commercial, whether it's a non-commercial, they will have this vision, they will have a set of goals, and based on the goals, they will come up with the strategies which will help them achieve the goals and vision. Now let's take some examples. Now when I say vision, a vision is basically a very high-level statement made by the management defining the roadmap where they want to take their organization. So it's at a very high level, it's just the future roadmap laid out by the management. So I'll take a very hypothetical example here of a US bank based in Minneapolis. So let's assume that, a set of people, the management, they sit down and say, okay, we need to come up with a vision. And they decide that, okay, the vision of our bank is to become a market leader in the retail banking space. Now, again, as you see, it's a very high level. It's just a future roadmap they are laying out. It doesn't have any specifics. Now, based on the vision, they come up with the goals. Now, the goals needs to be more what we call the SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So they may say, okay, we need to gain 20% market share in the retail banking space by 2020 in North American market. So now they are being more specific, and the goal is there to support the vision. And in order to support the goal, they need to come up with the strategies which will help them achieve the goal and the vision. And let's take some of the examples of our strategies. One can be to reduce the operating cost by $4 million. Second, they may think that, okay, let's take an advantage of all the new technologies coming in the market. One can be, they may decide, okay, we want to have some more presence in the Midwest region. So let's do that by opening new branches, new ATMs. Let's enter into a joint venture or a strategic alliance with certain stores where we can open our branches. Or it can also be they may have identified certain issues or certain problems they are facing. So they may say, okay, we want to improve our customer service because our competition is able to process the loan request in 2 days, whereas we are taking 10 days. So that's definitely a problem. They want to benchmark it and they want to meet that goal. So benchmarking is you compare yourself against the competition, and of course that has to be a realistic comparison. And once you decide, okay, we want to meet that goal, we want to achieve that goal, they formulate the strategies in order to achieve that. So these are some of the strategies which the management can come up with. So now you can see the vision, goals, and strategies are now aligned so that each one is helping each other to achieve the goal. So to tie everything back, these commercial entities, they have the departments, units. Within the units, departments, they have the processes. They conduct these processes, operations, and tasks using people and some sort of gadgets, machines, systems, application. And the entire purpose of doing all this is to achieve the vision, to meet the goals, and to execute the strategies. So, but what do you think, once everything is done, is it something the management can just relax and sit down and say, okay, we are set, we have done the vision, we have set the goals and strategies, and everything will work fine as per the plan. We don't need to worry anymore. That's not the case. The problem is constantly and every day there are changes in the environment. So let me introduce a new concept here, what we call the ecosystem. So ecosystem, let's first take a look at the ecosystem and then I'll explain what the business ecosystem is. The ecosystem, when I talk about the ecosystem, it's how we are connected to the environment, knowingly, unknowingly, directly and indirectly. So you all might have learned in our classes, in our school, the biological ecosystem, how it works. And if you recollect that, we are all connected somehow. We don't live in isolation. So the same concept now these days, you can see it in the business domain, what we call the business ecosystem. So what the business ecosystem says is your organization is not in isolation. You have your core processes, you have your departments, you have your value streams, capabilities, your core competencies, and your core supply chain, which definitely is part of your core enterprise. Of course, you cannot ignore these, but as you move outside, you need to also take care of these elements or these entities, your customers of the customer. You also have to take care of your suppliers of the supplier, your strategic partners. It can be your joint venture partners, or it can be some sort of strategic alliance you have formed. And as you go out, these are more of environmental factors, which again, they are like at a very macro level, but still they are very important to understand and react to. Economical, social, competition, technical, investors, legal. So that's your business ecosystem. So what this concept says is you are not living in isolation. Your enterprise has to understand the ecosystem and react to it. So as I said earlier, once the management sets a vision, goal, and strategies, and they start executing those strategies, it's unlikely that the ecosystem will be stable. The business ecosystems are very dynamic in nature, and there is always some sort of disruption going on. When I say disruption, that means somehow you need to react to it. And I'll give some more examples to it. But the key concept here is whenever there is a disruption in your business ecosystem, your vision, your goal and strategies needs to be revisited. The reason is the disruption in the ecosystem will lead to two things. One is it will create some sort of problems, or it will create some sort of opportunities for the organization to capitalize on it. Right? So any disruption in your ecosystem will have any of these two. Either it will create some problems or opportunities. So let's take some examples here. So that will make more sense to you guys. So let's suppose your competitor comes up with a new product, or they add some new features to the existing product or line of product. So that's a problem for you because now you need to react to it. You cannot just sit there and keep looking at it, because sooner or later, you will lose your market, you'll lose your customers. So you need to react to it. That's a problem. Or the government may come up with a new law. They pass a new law, and now you need to make sure that all your policies, all your systems, applications, or processes, they abide by that law. So for example, I'll just give an example. In 2009, when we had this subprime mortgage crisis, the federal government came up with a new law which was called ARRA, American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. And within a span of like 1 month, across all the government agencies, everybody had to make sure that they abide by that new law. That means they had to make sure all their systems, applications support that law. and it was like an overnight project everybody had to do. Or it can also be some opportunities coming in. It can be in the sense, there's a new technology introduced, or there's a breakthrough in the new technology in terms of, let's say, smart technology or RFID or a cloud computing, and the company wants to use it in order to minimize their cost and leverage their resources. So that's an opportunity. Or it can also be new emerging markets or economies opening up their doors for the new, multinational companies. So now you have a new market in front of you to tap on. So the disruption can be good and bad, but the essence of this is you need to react to it. So what will happen? The management will not sit and keep looking at it. They want some solution. They want a solution which can help them solve the problem or help them exploit the opportunities which exist. Right? So we are clear that there's an ecosystem. The companies need to understand that, they are not living in isolation. The corporations are not in isolation. There will be a disruption in the ecosystem, and this disruption will create the problems or opportunities, either or. Now the vision, goal, and strategies is not in alignment. They need to realign. And in order to realign them, a solution is required. So now let's take a look at a solution. What is a solution? Now typically people think solution as an IT concept or IT aspect of it. But the solution may include any of these four. It may include an organizational restructuring. That means now the management may decide, okay, based on all these changes, we may not need one department or unit, or we need to merge two departments into one, or we need to train the existing force, existing people to perform additional things. So you might have heard of, a large number of people getting laid off. So one of the common thing is, one of the whole department or unit is shut down, and most likely that is being outsourced to some other place. So now they don't need those bunch of people, and that's all part of the organizational restructuring. It can be a business process re-engineering. That means the BPR is a very important concept and a very critical element for any BA, business analyst. So what it does is, you drastically or you radically change the way you do it. You do your work. And BPR is a very common component of any solution. So BPR concept, we'll talk more in detail in the course, but you cannot ignore this piece. You may not be involved in this layer because this is more like a management role where you may not be involved, but from this point onwards, any BA must know. He or she will be involved from this point onwards. Or it can also be a business process improvement initiatives. When I say business process improvement initiatives, these are like, a little bit different than BPR, business process re-engineering. So BPI is you try to eliminate the waste or non-value added tasks from your process and improve it, make it more efficient and effective. And in order to support your processes, this is a fourth and most important element, information technology to support the processes. So the management may decide, okay, in order to support these processes, we need some sort of systems or application. Now it can be a brand new application, it can be an enhancement to the existing application, or it can be fixing an existing application. But the solution can be any four of these. It can be any one of these. It can be any four of these. Typically, I've seen it is mix of all four. So now we are clear that okay, the management wants a solution. They may not know in detail, okay, we need to do certain activities within which step. They may know that what is the problem, they may know what the opportunity is, but now they want a solution. And as I said, solution can be any four of these. So in order to develop and implement a solution, the customer or the organization will look for experts. Since they don't have this kind of expertise within their own organization, they will look for right people who have the right expertise in order to design and develop this solution so that they can solve the problem or take an advantage of the opportunity. So from this point onwards, what happens is the organization, from this point onwards, those are the clients, you would say. The client will say, okay, we need to hire a team who can build this solution and implement this. So there will be a bunch of people, and there will be a project manager. The reason why you need a project manager is all these solutions are being implemented as a projects. And we'll talk more in the course why you need to understand the project management. It's very important because these solutions are being implemented as a project. Project has a definite start and end date, right? So you need a project manager who will be responsible for managing the scope of the project. He or she will be responsible for successfully delivering the project. That's when you will also need a business analyst, because the business analyst role is to understand the stakeholders' needs. When I say stakeholder, it's a very detailed topic, but for the sake of discussion, a stakeholder is any group or individual who is getting impacted by the outcome of the project. So the business analyst will have to sit down with a different group of stakeholders. It can be a group, it can be individuals, and he or she has to understand the real business needs of the stakeholders. Right? You will need a bunch of technical architects who will be helping the team to design the architecture of the system if there's IT involved. And as I said, 9 out of 10 times you will have some sort of information technology, some sort of systems or application built in order to support your BPR or BPI initiatives. So you'll have the technical architects, you will have our developers who will be coding, and you will have the testers who will be testing this system. But this is a whole team. Typically, this is what the team looks like. You will have the PM, business analyst, technical or solution architects, developers, and testers. Now, they are the part of the solution team. Now, from this point onwards, I'll more focus towards a BA, business analyst, because that's what the demo is all about. So as a business analyst, if I ask all 8 of you guys, most of you will tell me, okay, business analyst is a bridge between business and IT. So by that definition, you kind of limit the real role of a BA. That definition gives me a sense that, okay, this guy is just getting the requirements from one end and giving it to the IT folks. But that's not the case. The role of the business analyst is to help the team, help your stakeholders to define the solution. And the way you do it is you understand the current state of the processes. You understanding the current state of an organization can be done by understanding the current business processes, understand what are the pain points, the bottlenecks, issues the processes are having. That means all the inefficiencies or the redundancies of the processes. You understand those. Also, if there are systems already there in place, you will apply the same principles and concepts at a system level. You will understand the pain points, the issues or the bottlenecks your stakeholders are facing using the system. But very key concept here is any system you are trying to understand, you are trying to fix or build, first thing you need to do is understand the business process behind that, because any system which is up and running there is supporting some process. So once you do that, you do the current state analysis, then you go to the future state analysis. You say, okay, I've identified these issues in the current state. Now let me lay out the future state. So you develop the future state processes. Make it more efficient and effective. Right? So you understand the current state. From the current state, you come up with the future state so that the processes are more efficient and effective. And then, as part of your core role, you will be also doing eliciting. That means you are not gathering, you are eliciting the requirements, you are analyzing them, you are documenting them, you're validating the requirements. Now when I say requirements, it can be at a business level, it can be at a system level. So as a business analyst, your core role is to elicit the requirements, analyze them, document them, validate the requirements with the stakeholders. And based on these requirements, the solution will be developed. The technical architects will develop the architecture based on your requirements. The developers will be coding based on your requirements. The testers will be testing against the requirements which were given by you. So everything is driven by what you do. And the main goal is to realign, to help your customer, to help your client realign their vision, goal, and strategies. So the solution, at the end of the day, the solution should be such that they are able to solve the problem, or they are able to exploit the opportunity for which they initiated the entire project. If the solution cannot do this, that's utter failure. And the whole basic premise lies on the requirements. If you don't do the good job in requirements, that means the solution won't be successful and the client won't be able to solve the problem. Right? So this is why you do any sort of analysis work. Okay? And we will talk more on this because that's what you will do. Whether it's a business level or a system level, right? Even here, when you are doing your current state analysis or future state analysis, you will be doing all of these. You will be eliciting the requirements, analyzing them, documenting them, validating them. So first you have to do at a business level, and then once you validate those requirements with the stakeholders, you start looking at a system level. So this is a very important slide here. Now going back to what I just said few slides back, You first need to understand what is the business need of your stakeholder. So this model, the way this pyramid you should read is, this is a problem domain. That means you are trying to understand the problem. So here you are trying to focus more on the root cause or the basic needs, what the business wants. Once you're done with this, you start looking at the stakeholder requirements, which are more specific. And once you're done with this, then you take a look at a system level. So let me give an example here. So I said, right, in a few slides back, we took an example of a bank. And one of the thing the management identified was they need to improve the customer service. They wanted to improve the customer service. The reason they wanted to do is they identified that currently their competition is taking 2 business days in order to process a loan, and they are taking 10 days, 5 times more than the competition. So they need to fix this. They need to match it to the competition. So that's at a very high level. That's what the business need is. And you may not be, as I said, you may not be involved in at this layer, because this is more like of a management analyst role who would be doing this. They might be sitting with the CXO level people, CEO or CFO, CMO, CIO, and they will be establishing these high level requirements for you. So even before the project is initiated, you might already have this level of requirements. So once this is defined, you start taking a look at a stakeholder requirements. Now, as I said, stakeholder can be a group of people. That means it can be a unit, it can be a department, it can be individuals, but anyone who is impacted by the outcome of the project. So for the purpose of our example, we may say, okay, there's a one role, the bank clerk. So you start talking to them. As a BA, you talk to them, and he or she says, I should be able to review the loan documents. Right? That is one requirement they give you. The second requirement is, he or she says, I should be able to send the application to the loan approving officer for the final approval. Right? So you are getting these kind of requirements from different people, different groups, more from the business point of view. Even at this layer, you're not really concerned about system application. You're more focused towards what they need, but it's more specific than this layer. And they may just simply state in a pure English way, in English statements, no technical language used. So based on these requirements, once you have a good understanding of this level of requirements, that's when you start looking at a system level requirements. So the role of a BA is not just to look at a system level requirements. He or she has to start from this layer, understand what the different stakeholders are, what are the needs, what do they need, what are the requirements, and based on that they start looking at a system level requirements. The reason why you need to do is so that everything is aligned. The system requirements should be able to support the stakeholder requirements, and the stakeholder requirements should be able to support the real business needs of the project. That's why we call this problem domain, and this one is called a solution domain. Now the system level requirements, you have different tools and techniques to elicit, to analyze, and to document them. And that's what we'll learn more in the course. But typically you have these different types of requirements you will come across when you are doing requirements at a system level. You will have a functional requirements. You will have a non-functional requirements. You will have the interface transition. Business rules. Graphical user interface requirements, what we call GUI. And there are certain set of documents you need to create at this level. And the reason why you keep hearing that the BA is a bridge between the business and IT is because of this, that you need to understand first at this layer, and using your expertise, skills, tools and techniques, you have to translate those requirements into all these system level requirements. But more than that, you need to make sure that the requirements which you get from your stakeholders are indeed aligned to the business need, and it is in fact solving the problem for which the project was initiated. Because most of the times the stakeholders give the requirements which they feel or what they need rather than what the project needs. So you need to be very careful. You need to do the root cause analysis. You need to keep questioning. When I say questioning, it doesn't mean literally questioning, but you need to have that logical thought process, analytical thought process, to go back and make sure that, okay, what the requirements given by the stakeholders is in alignment with the business needs, so that they can solve the problem. So here is a good example I'll put here. So as I said, the business need is to expedite the loan approval process from 10 business days to 2 business days. So the management decides, okay, we want to meet the competition. That's at a very high level. So based on this need, you start talking to the stakeholders. And as I said, you may be talking to the loan clerk, and he or she may say that, okay, I should be able to review the loan documents. So you will basically document them using a simple English statements. Right? He or she may say that I should be able to send the loan application to the loan approving officer for the final approval. Now this is basically a very interactive process. It's not that they will be giving you and you will be just writing it down. You need to, first of all, you need to identify the right stakeholders. You need to go back to them and ask them the right set of questions so that they can explicitly say that what they need. And based on that, you have to do the analysis. Documentation is just small piece of work what you will be doing. The main, your key value is to get the right set of requirements, go to the root cause, find out the real need of the stakeholders, analyze them, and of course the documentation will be there. But that's just not, what I'm saying is the documentation is not the only piece. So you will have a bunch of these different requirements. So when you start talking to your loan approving officer, he or she may not think of this requirement. But as a good business analyst, you may think, okay, what if the loan approving officer has some question? What if they need some clarification? So you ask, okay, is there a way you need to talk to the bank clerk if you have any questions or concerns? Do you need that kind of feature where you should be able to go back to the bank clerk and ask for more information? So the loan approving officer may say, oh yeah, definitely, that's a good point, and I need that kind of capability. Right? So maybe in the current world, the loan approving officer is not having any way of getting the customer's report, the credit report, directly from one of the bureaus. So back and forth, when you are talking, when you are discussing the requirements during the elicitation sessions, either the loan approving officer or you come up with the idea that, okay, why not, we give you a capability where you can directly go to the Equifax bureau and get the customer's credit report in real time. Right? So you do all these requirements, talk to the stakeholders. So once you have this kind of level of requirements, that's when you start thinking at a system level. And now you will interestingly see how things change. So one requirement I have here is a personal loan bank clerk should be able to review the loan documents, right? That's one requirement I have. But that one requirement can spawn more than one requirement at a system level. So let's take a one-to-one mapping. So that's my stakeholder requirement. And when I try to convert that same requirement at a system level, I have more than one requirement. The first one says, the system shall allow the personal loan bank clerk to review the loan documents. Right? It's pretty much the same thing, but now I'm talking at a system level. But now when you are talking at a system level, you need to change your perspective. The second requirement can be the system shall allow the personal loan bank clerk to enter the comments against each application received for loan processing. Now you may see that, okay, when this guy is reviewing, and the scenario is he or she has to review it and send it to the next level, to the loan approving officer. So to make it more convenient for the loan approving officer to approve it or reject it, we need some sort of feature where the loan clerk can enter some comments, what they found in the application, good, bad, whatever, right? So you can see my one requirement has resulted into multiple system level requirements. Now you may think, okay, what is functional, what is non-functional, right? So functional requirement is a requirement which basically provides some sort of feature or a function to the user. Right? In this case, the bank clerk is directly using the system to review the documents. In this case, he or she is using the system to enter the comments. So that's a functional requirements. It provides some sort of functionality or a feature to the user. So each of these stakeholder requirements can spawn multiple system level requirements, and it can be, multiple functional requirements or non-functional requirements or the business rules, interface requirements, transition requirements. So as a business analyst, you will have to do this kind of analysis and make sure that you are taking a 360-degree view of the requirements and there are no gaps in it. What is a non-functional requirement? So non-functional requirement is basically the constraint you put on the system or the environmental constraints under which the system has to operate. Now these are different than the functional because the functional, the user is directly using it. He or she is using this feature or the function and it has a direct observable value to the user. But in this case, it's a little bit different, but still very important. So let's suppose you're building a banking application and the requirement, nobody stated that, and you as a business analyst, BA didn't do a good job in getting those kind of requirements. And the way the system was designed, the architecture was built, it can support only 1,000 people at a time. But now this banking application is a very, let's suppose it's a popular bank, a lot of customers, and it's in real world scenario, at any given point of time, this bank is expecting more than 1,000 people at a time using the system. So what will happen if this requirement was missed? The moment you roll out this system to the end users, the system will crash because the system cannot handle more than 1,000 people. Whereas the requirement is maybe 4,000 people maximum, or rather minimum, you can say. Right? It has to support minimum 4,000 people because we expect at least 4,000 people using the system at any given point of time. And there are many more non-functional requirements, but we'll take a look very closely in the course as we go along. Then you have certain requirements which we call the business rules. Now, what is a business rule? Now, business rules are basically the constraints imposed by the management across the enterprise. Of course, there's a different definition, but I don't go by definition. This is my explanation. So whether it's a system, whether you are using a system or whether you are doing it manually, the business rule is similar to like a policy. Think about a policy, right? You might have heard about, okay, that's not our policy, or as per our policy, we need to do this. So in this case, we say that the loan amount of more than 800,000 US dollars must be approved by the loan approval committee. Now it doesn't matter whether you are using a system or somebody is walking in the bank and giving this application physically. And there will be a bunch of different rules which you must be very careful in order to collect them, because these are not set and written somewhere. I mean, typically the business rules are all in the mind of people. Nobody has the entire set of rules written in one place. So when you're talking to your stakeholders, they will be talking to you, very casually, and they might be just telling you these rules embedded within the statements. So they may not say, okay, this is my business rule. They may just say, by the way, yeah, if it's less than 800,000, we can do it. Otherwise, we need to send this application to the loan approving committee. So that's when you should capture it right there. Say, okay, that means there is a policy there. That means any amount more than 800,000 has to go through this channel. So basically, these rules are constraints, policy constraints enforced by the management across the enterprise. Then you may also come across what we call interface requirements. So the interface requirements is something when you have more than two applications and there's an exchange of data or information between the applications. You need to understand those requirements. So in this case, we are saying the system shall be capable to send the request to Equifax Bureau in order to receive the customer's credit report. Right? So here we just said the stakeholder, the loan approving officer just told you that, I need some sort of mechanism where I can get the report from the bureau. So you understand that, okay, the bureau will have their own application, will have their own system, and our system which we are building will be communicating with this external system, right? So that's an interface requirement. So now interface requirements are a bit technical in nature, and there is a different artifact which the technical team owns. But as a business analyst, you need to identify those points of points of exchange where these different systems handshake. They exchange some sort of data or messages or information. You need to identify those points. And then you have the transition requirements. I won't go into the GUI requirements because they are very different in nature, but I'll just touch base on that. So the transition requirements are the requirements which are needed only for the temporary phase or just for the time being. So as I said, you have the current state, and now you need to move to the future state. So in order to successfully move from the current state to the future state, you need certain requirements, and those will be temporary in nature. So once you move to the future state, you no longer need those requirements. So they are, of course, they are short-lived, but they are still very important, because if you don't identify those requirements, you cannot move from the current state to the future state without any issues. So in this case, let's suppose you identify that, okay, the scenario is you have a bunch of applications. Let's suppose there are like 100 applications which are not yet approved. So what will happen on the day when you roll out, when you do all your, based on the BPR, the BPI initiatives you did, based on the requirements you elicited, analyzed, documented, the solution was built, the system was developed, it was tested, and finally on the day of deployment or when you're rolling out to the user, there are like, I gave 100, right? 100 applications sitting there. So what do you do with those? Do you let them process using the old mechanism, or do you enforce the new rules and new requirements on it? So the management may say, okay, or the stakeholders may say that, okay, you know what, let's exempt those. Let them go through the old mechanism. So you will say, okay, you need to make sure that you are doing those requirements well ahead in time, and the system is able to support that capability where all the 100 applications which are in the pipeline are exempted from the new rules. So that's what we call transition requirements. Now this is a definition of the business analysis. But it's very important to know that the BA is responsible for eliciting the actual needs of the stakeholders and not simply their expressed desire. So you cannot assume that what they are saying is what they want. Sometimes they may be saying something, but that's not what they want. So you need to go back to the drawing board. You need to talk to them, communicate with them, and make sure that you identify the real requirement. You go to the real business need rather than just what they say. Now IIBA is International Institute of Business Analysis. That's the prime body which is responsible for advancing the BA discipline. And similarly, the PMI, Project Management Institute, is primarily for the project management. So they have different certifications and a lot of good things. But PMI is, until now, PMI was mainly for the project management. Now 6 months back they came up with a BA certification. So now IIB and PMI are head-to-head competing for the BA certification market. It's going to be interesting to see, how things shape up, but both are equally equally good. IIB has been since 2004 or 3, and PMI is of course much before that, but as I said, IIB is mainly towards the BA profession. PMI is mainly towards the project management, but recently, PMI also ventured into the BA world. So now this is also a very important slide. Now I just talked about these different activities. Let's take a more detailed look at what you should be doing. Now as a business analyst, you will be doing all these activities, right? You will be doing the needs assessment. When I say needs assessment, you may be talking to the senior leadership. Maybe not. Most of the times, as I said, it's a role. The management analyst role will be doing it. But at this level, you are mainly focusing on talking to the key stakeholders, the management team, understanding the high level business need, what the problems they are facing, what the opportunities they want to exploit. Based on that, you start doing your requirements elicitation. Now, people may think gathering is same as elicitation, but that's a different concept. Eliciting the needs means, eliciting the requirements means you go to the real needs of the stakeholders, not just what they stated. And you have different tools and techniques to do it. We will see them shortly. But as a business analyst, you will be involved in doing this, requirements elicitation. Based on the requirements you got from your elicitation meetings, you will do the analysis of those requirements. And you will have different tools of techniques to do the analysis. Of course, documentation will be there. Now, based on the requirements analysis you do, you will come up with some certain artifacts. Now, artifacts is a fancy word of some document names. So you come up with the different artifacts using some templates. A bunch of different documents will be created using the industry standard practices and templates, and they will be reviewed by the stakeholders. So you need to go back to the stakeholders and make sure that the requirements you captured are indeed solving their problem. And of course, you have to manage the requirements, because as a business analyst, whether you are a lead, whether you are a manager, or just a team member, you need to make sure that you are managing the requirements at different levels. So for example, if you are a lead, you are managing a team of BAs. Not only that, you are also managing the requirements group. That means, how things are working, what are the processes you follow within the requirements team. Want to make sure that the scope is not being added, what we call the scope creep. So you need to make sure that there's the requirements which you are getting is within the scope of the project, and that ties back to the PM discipline. You need to understand the project scope statement, the project charter, and those things will be covered in detail in the course. And even if you are working as pure business analyst, you need to manage your own requirements. That means, see, the requirements are not one-time activity. That means all these activities which are being listed out here are being done in iterations, and they are done incrementally. That means you do it multiple times, and with each iteration you refine them. So you want to make sure that the requirements you are getting are up to date. They are not out of sync. There's no conflict. There are no duplicate requirements, and of course, they are within the scope of the boundary of the project. Right? So these are the key. These 6 activities is what a BA is responsible for. Now, planning and monitoring is mainly done by a lead business analyst or the PM if you don't have the lead BA. So in this phase, you basically plan what all activities you'll be doing as a requirements point of view, right? What we call the RMP, requirements management plan. The PM or the lead BA will come up with the RMP, requirements management plan. How will the requirements be done? What are the processes? What will be the tools and techniques used? Who will be approving them? And some of the underlying competencies. We will take a look at that as well. But as a BA, as a business analyst, that's what you will be doing. All of these 6. Now this is a very important slide again. So here, what I've done is, I've mapped the PM, the project management processes with the requirements processes. Whether it's a waterfall or agile, you still have to initiate, you have to plan, you have to execute, you have to monitor, control, and you have to close a project. And same way, you have to elicit the requirements, analyze them, document them, do the solution assessment, and manage them. Right? It doesn't matter whether it's a waterfall or agile. So what this table shows is, the columns represents the PM processes, the project management processes, and the rows similarly shows the requirements processes. Now at the intersection of each one of these, you have what you are supposed to do as a BA. So for example, if you are in the initiating phase and when you are doing the eliciting the requirements, you will be using any of these tools and techniques to get the requirements. You can be doing the brainstorming, requirements workshop, document analysis, focus groups, interviews, questionnaire surveys, prototyping. So these are some of the tools and techniques you will be using when you are doing the requirements in the very initial phase of the project. Similarly, you have these techniques to analyze the requirements in this phase. Similarly, you have certain sort of documentation which you will be coming up with in the initiating phase of the project. Similarly, with the solution assessment, what needs to be done in order to make sure that the stakeholder requirements are met and the goal of the project is being met. So you have this different tools and techniques you can be using. Similarly, for each different phases. Now, I'm not saying that you will be using all of these, but this is exhaustive list of what tools and techniques any BA can think of. And in the course, we will focus on most of them, which are very important. So I will focus mainly on those which are used in the day-to-day world, which are used in the practical application. But I'll touch base on those which are not used, but still they are important for you to know. Maybe from the theory point of view, you may not be using it in your job from the application point of view, but still it's good to know. And see, this way, when you plan to take a certification in future, you have already covered this, because the reason I'm saying is this is coming out. I mean, this is not in any book. I read, since I'm a CBAP, I'm a member of IIBA. I've read the entire BABOK, which is the business analysis body of knowledge. And I've also read the PMI's body of knowledge. So based on these two body of knowledge, I have mapped the PM processes with the requirements processes. So if you know all of these, I'm sure you not only can be a successful BA, but you can also crack the exam in the first shot. And see, most of the times, you don't know when to use this. So just by looking at this chart, you can know that, okay, if I'm in the planning phase, what tools and techniques I should be using to analyze the requirements, or what are the documentation I need to create. Do we need to create all the documentation? Of course not. So which are the key documents which we need to prepare? That's what we'll show you. Now, as I said, whether it's agile or waterfall or anywhere in between, this will still be true. The biggest difference in agile is the documentation is a little bit different, but you may still be doing the same. You may still be using the tools and techniques for eliciting the requirements, for doing the analysis. The documentation may be a little bit different. As we all know that agile educates lightweight documentation. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have any documentation. It will have certain documentation, but not to the extent what we do in a pure waterfall projects. Now let's take a very close look at what you need to become a good BA. So the second one, the second word in the business analyst is what? Analysis. And again, it goes back to, that you need to have a good analytical skills in order to become a good BA. So you need to be good in questioning. Not when I say question, that means you keep questioning in true sense, but you keep going to the basics, to the root cause. So there's no fun if somebody has already stated all the requirements, and all you need to do is write it down and give it to the developers. There's no fun in it. As I said, most of the times your stakeholders, the requirements they give you is not what they actually want. So as a good business analyst, you need to have a good analytical mind and go to the root cause or the real need of the stakeholders. Second one is a good problem solving skills. On each project or on any given day, you may have a different issue, you may have different problems. So there cannot be one solution or one answer to all the problems. So every time you have a new problem, you need to come up with a new solution. And as I said, as a business analyst is not the only role who is helping the client in building the solution. It can be, a BA has to contribute, the technical architects have to contribute, the stakeholders, it can be an SME, subject matter experts, have to contribute. So different bunch of people, but as a BA, you are the key, you are the focal point who will be responsible for developing the solutions. Communication skills. verbal as well as written, because the reason is, as a BA, you have to give a lot of um, presentations, a lot of demo to your customers, stakeholders. It can be high level management, it can be your own internal team. When I say internal team, that means your development team, your PM, your solution architects, testers, developers. You need to have a good creative and critical thought process. So it goes back to, as I said, every time you encounter a problem, it's a new one. So you need to be creative in solving it too. It cannot be one solution or one answer can be applied to all the problems. As I said, good presentation skills, learning skills. It's important because as a BA, you need to keep learning new things. On any new project, you have a new domain, new environment, new people, new processes, new tools and techniques. So you should be capable to learn new things, scale to the next level. That's what I call. I mean, learning doesn't mean you need to go back to, school or college, university. It can be on the job learning too. And it's pretty much common, even today, after like 10, 12 years of doing the BA role, I'm still engaging myself in so many trainings, so many seminars, workshops. On an average, like I spend like 2 weeks in the whole year in the trainings, because so that I can keep learning new things. In IT, if you don't learn, you become outdated like in 2 years. You need to have good organizational skills. That means, basic stuff like, good in coordination, planning your meetings, managing a team. Doesn't mean you have to um, direct them, but the way you conduct your job. Domain knowledge. Now, domain knowledge is something I would say good to know, good to have, but it's impossible for everyone to have the domain knowledge. So domain knowledge is, for example, you are going for an interview um, in a mortgage bank. So they will see if you have any experience in the mortgage industry. Now, if you don't have, it's not a really an end of the interview. But at the same time, if you have it, it gives you an added advantage as compared to somebody who doesn't have it. So it's good to have some basic domain knowledge. And as part of the course, we have different domains ranging from pure finance, investment banking, mortgage, derivatives. Then we have the pharmaceutical, healthcare, logistics, transportation, and many more, which you can pick. And if you want to, just focus on specific domain, we can do that too. Ability to influence the stakeholders. Now, this is also very important because as a business analyst and as a person who is being seen as somebody who will be giving the solution or who can help the team to solve the problem, he or she should be having a good influence on the stakeholder. So what you say as a business analyst should be something which people really look forward to, or they will take it in a serious way, not something which can be ignored. And that comes as you start working. It's not like on the very first day or very first few weeks you will be like that, right? Once you start working as a BA, you will get a good hold of the organization, the client you are supporting, the project scope. You will understand the domain, and that's when you become very effective. And some of the more skills required is, you need to be aware of how the stakeholder community is, who is more politically active, who is not, who is more influential, And that doesn't mean you need to take some sides, but you need to make sure that the stakeholders who has more influence is always taken care of as compared to somebody who is not that influential. And this is what we call the Reiki, RACI, Reiki matrix. And that's more to it. Like, you also have a stakeholder analysis where we identify all these elements. So you need to be aware of those kind of things. You also have to be a little bit aware of from the technical point of view. You don't really need to start coding or learn coding. You need to understand, okay, on which is the platform on which the system is being built, whether it's a .NET, Java, COBOL mainframe, or a Cold Fusion, right? What is I'm saying subject, I'm sorry. What is service-oriented architecture, SOA? What is a web service? What is cloud computing? So some basic things, not in detail, but since you are talking to the solution architects or the developers, or they might be talking to you, they might be using all these words. So in a meeting, you don't want to get clueless what these terms are. So you need to be aware of these things. You need to be a good team player because you have to talk to, from the business side, you have to talk to your stakeholders. You have to talk to your internal stakeholders. That means your development team, testing team, solution architects, technical writers, PM. So you have to be a very good team player. You cannot be someone who is being perceived as very aggressive, hostile towards certain group of people. Right? System thinking. As I said, it's of course very important because once you understand the business level requirements, you need to now convert them into the system level requirements. So from that point onwards, you have to change your perspective of how you do the requirements. Ultimately, the system requirements have to go back and support the processes, but your perspective changes. Our decision making, sometimes you have to decide on what solution can be proposed. You have to decide on which tools and techniques you will be using or how you need to do the requirements. You need to have certain, you need to make certain calls there. A good ethics, as I said, you need to have good ethics, good standards, and some little knowledge of the client you're going there. So again, as I said, it comes by time. It's not like first day you will be having all the knowledge, but as and when you start working with them, they give you all the what we call the organizational process assets, all the documents. You will learn more about them. And also it's important, last point is you should be able to learn and use new tools. Now tools is the last thing which I really care about, because most of the times when I interview people, I really don't care about whether they know the tools which we are using, because tools these days are so user friendly. All you need to do is spend few hours or a couple of days and you can master those tools. But you should be comfortable using these any new tools on the job and should be productive maybe in 1 or 2 days. Okay, now let's talk why this role is so important. You can just the figures here on the screen. 71% of the projects fail because of the poor requirements. Or rather 71% of the failed projects are because of the poor requirements. Right? Requirements defect accounts for 56% of the rework. That means that since the requirements were not done correctly, they had to rework on it. $250 billion of waste. Now these figures are not from like some old data or old publication. These are like 2014. So you can see the importance of the business analyst and the role of the BA is so important. And not only the role of the BA, to have a good BA on the team is very important. So you need to have a person who has the right skills, right expertise, and right knowledge. So they have a good theory, good fundamentals clear, and they know how to use them in the practical day-to-day life. So let's take a look at the evolution of the BA role. So in the good old days, like 20, 25 years back, so there was basically no role of a BA. Frankly speaking, the developer used to talk to the stakeholders. He or she used to do the requirements, design, develop, and test it, and move it to production. But now, since last 10, 15 years, they have realized, and just now what we saw on the slide, that if you don't do a good job on the requirements, that means the entire project is a failure. The money you invested in is now just a waste. And also, second thing is, in those days, the systems were pretty simple. Not many not many organizations were having this kind of system or applications. But in today's world, you have these complex systems spanning multiple units, multiple departments, and even outside the organization. And not one or two, but mostly everybody, whether it's a top-level management or mid-level manager or operationals people, they all use some sort of application or system. So this complexity has resulted in this BA discipline being more formalized and more organized. So in today's world, you don't want to give this role to anyone. You want to let this job done by a person who is expert on getting the requirements, doing the elicitation, analysis, documenting, talking to the stakeholders, validating it. And it goes same with other roles too. Let the developers develop it, let the solution architect build it, let the testing team test it. So everybody has its own expertise and their own unique contribution in the project. So here you can see different terms we have. We have the term business analyst, we have the term business process analyst, IT business analyst. Then we have the systems analyst, requirements engineer, business systems analyst, and the business analyst. So all these 7, 8 different titles, what do you think? Are they same or different? Now, the answer is both yes and no. So let's go here. So this is what just we saw a few slides back. So as part of the business analysis, you understand what the business needs, right? What the business does and how it does it. You determine how to improve the existing processes. Then you see which one to automate or which one to get rid of. So here in these 3 steps, you are basically doing the current state and the to-be state, what we just saw a few slides back at a business layer. Making the process more efficient and effective. So once you do this, now you take a look at a system level. You design the features of the IT system, which will be supporting the processes, and implement the new features of the IT system, right? So that's an end-to-end spectrum we have. Now the BA role, when we talk about the business analyst or the business process analyst, he or she is mainly focused on this aspect. doing the requirements. He or she will be doing the requirements, eliciting, analyzing, documenting, validating the requirements, but mainly at the business level. They will be coming up with the current state and the future state of the processes. But once I start moving on the right side, you see that I have the IT business analyst. Now as an IT business analyst, they are good at both. That means they understand what needs to be done at this layer. They will sit with the stakeholders, understand the current processes, remove the inefficiencies, come up with the future state processes, and then they develop the system level requirements based on those. The systems analyst is more geared toward doing the system level requirements. So he or she may not be involved in this phase, but once the business level requirements are defined, the system analyst may start converting them into the system level. And then you have the requirements engineer, business systems analyst, and the business analyst role. So as you see, many of them, almost all of them, have some sort of overlapping. But the course we have designed is mainly for the IT business analyst. That means he or she should be able to perform from end to end. So he or she should be able to understand the current state, the future state, and churn the same set of business level requirements into the system level requirements. So our course is basically preparing you for the entire spectrum. Okay, so that's interesting to know that so many of you guys are so excited. And for the purpose of managing the time, I muted you guys, but we will have a Q&A session once I'm done with all the slides. Okay, thanks. So you can see the average salary you can expect is anywhere between 85 to 95, I would say. I mean, though this chart says 19.5%, or mostly you will fall into 80 to 90K. But if you are in a metro like in New York or DC or any other big cities, you should be expecting anywhere close to between 90 to 100K. Now there are different factors which will play on how much you will draw. So for example, if you are working in New York City, let's suppose you are working in the financial district, right, with 8 years of experience. So you are in a financial domain, you are working in New York, so you are living in New York or close to it. So your pay has to be much more than 90K. It has to be maybe 110, 120K. At the same time, if you are in some suburbs of Chicago, if you're not, let's suppose you are working for a small bank, suburbs of Chicago, then probably your pay might be close to 80, 85, but still it is not bad. I mean, in the suburbs of Chicago, you compare the cost of living, the standard of living. So the cost of living drastically goes down when you move to suburbs of Chicago as compared to living in, New York State. So those factors will depend or decide exactly how much you will earn. But as I said, on an average, you should be expecting between 85 to 95K. Okay, the career prospects. Now, BA, business analysis, is one of the fastest growing profession. This is not, and these figures are not from some private source. It's coming from the US Department of labor. And you can see that, by 2020, what will be the demand for a BA. And one of the reason is they got so much of work coming in future, but they don't have enough skills or rather skilled people to fill this role. So you can make out, if you go ahead and decide to work as a BA, first of all, you will be earning a good pay, as I said, like 85, 95K. Second thing, your demand will always be there. It's not going to go away, right? And the third one is it's very, I would say, a key role. That means you will always be a very key member of the team. So next to PM, you have this BA role. So most of the times you will see a BA, the next path in the career is that of either a project manager or a business architect. Now this you can make a quick check, and probably you have done this. That's why you all 10 of you guys are on this demo session. And you can see, as compared to any other, role, you will get more hits for a BA job. Now some of the reasons why you should be pursuing your career as a BA, one is, as I said, that's my take. Some of you might not agree. Some of you, in the past I've seen like people who just want to take this role as because of good pay. But this, in general, one thing is you should have a passion to solve the problems. As I said, with each project, you have a new issues, new problems. So you should have that passion to face new issues, new problems, and solve them, to build on your past experience. So something, most of you guys have some 4 to 5 years of experience. So you can reuse it. You don't want to throw it away. You may have some experience in a bank. You may have some experience in, let's suppose, working in a pharmacy. So that's a very good plus point. You can reuse it. So you have a domain knowledge already there. All you need to do is learn the tools and techniques of a BA, and you can club these two and get going as a BA. Third thing, you continue learning. This is one of the best ways to engage yourself in new skills, new technologies coming in. So with each project you have a new domain knowledge. You will be exposed to new skills, new tools, new methodologies. So for example, in one project you will be working in a waterfall environment. In the second one you may be working as in agile. Right? So you will be exposed to these different environments and you will be learning a lot. It may not be, consciously, it will be always subconsciously you will be learning a lot when you're working. The third point is, you want to transform your career into the forefront of IT. That means, as I said, the most important role will decide whether the project meets the goal of the stakeholders or not is a BA, because he or she is responsible to do the requirements, to make sure the requirements are indeed solving the problems or meeting the business need. And I'm stressing this again and again. I know I'm talking this sentence again and again because I want to enforce that in your mind, that the role of a BA, the most important part is this. So he or she is one of the key member of the team. Of course, financial benefits are there. Second, the other important point is your job is tool agnostic. That means you are not dependent on any certain technology or a tool. So as compared to somebody, an SAP consultant going in, so he or she will be in demand only if the client is implementing an SAP. Even though once they have implemented SAP, They may not need that person anymore. But the BA role is different because we don't depend on any tool or any sort of package system, package software. Whether it's Java, whether it's .NET, COBOL, or as I said, Cold Fusion, or it's a BPM, or any other platform the system is being built, you can keep reusing your tools and techniques to do the requirements. And that's also one of the good thing is you will never be out of demand because of this reason. Because you are not dependent on any tool or any technology, so that means it doesn't matter whether they are in demand or they get outdated, you will always be required. Then it also helps, of course, it will help you build your good communication skills and people skills. Now this is important here. From this slide you can see that as a business analyst you start here, you can grow to the lead business analyst, you can become a manager, and then you can decide to go on either of these routes. It can be a technical architect or technical path where you can become a business architect, manager, and then enterprise architect, or you can go towards a project management role. You can become the project lead or a manager, and also eventually you can climb to the program manager or any other role in the PMO. Now this is our training slide. Just want to make sure that, okay, we have a few more slides and then we are done. Okay, so this is our training roadmap. So what we do is our training is for 6 weeks. So the first 2 weeks we build the foundation, a good fundamentals, concepts, foundation of the BA discipline. And starting from the third week, we start introducing advanced concepts and also focus more on the practical application of the same. Right, so we start building the foundation, and then from that point onwards, we introduce you to different assignments, case studies that will basically help you apply those concepts and theory into practical world, practical application. And in all, it takes like 5 to 6 weeks. So by the end of 6th week, or rather end of 5th week, you should be able to, we will start preparing you for the interviews. We'll prepare the resume. We'll also do a Q&A sessions. And by 6th week, you should be able to start taking the interviews. Now the way we have structured our program is into 3 different modules. So the first module, as I said, it's basically more towards laying a good foundation, because it's very important for you to understand and know the concept foundation. So in this module, we'll basically cover the fundamentals of business analysis, how the organizations are structured, some of the key management concepts, like mainly like lean concepts, Kanban, continuous improvement. And these all are very important for you to understand, because we use them a lot when we are doing the BPR or BPI sort of things, like business process reengineering or initiatives, improvement initiatives. We'll also take a very close look at understand the stakeholders. We'll do a deep dive stakeholder analysis. What do you mean by stakeholders? How to identify them, how to differentiate them. So there's a technique called stakeholder analysis. We'll take a very good understanding on that. We'll also take a look at the different types of requirements. We'll show you what are the different types of requirements. In the slide we just talked about the functional, non-functional, transition, interface, business rules. So we'll teach you more in detail. Now, since all these solutions are being implemented as a project, we have to have a good understanding of the project management. So we'll cover a good deal of project management discipline. Okay, we'll also take a look at different SDLC models. What are the different software engineering practices? We'll explain you all of these, like waterfall, Scrum, Agile. Agile is part of. Scrum is part of Agile, and many more. Spiral model, RUP, Rational Unified Process, and then we will teach you the requirements processes in detail. What we just saw, needs assessment, requirements elicitation, analysis, documentation, solution assessment, requirements management. So all these we will do a very thorough understanding of those. So in the second module, we will basically introduce you to different concepts like process improvement concepts, how you do the current state and the to be future state, or the as a state and to be state of the processes, how to identify the pain points, the bottlenecks in a process. And there are different tools and techniques we'll learn. And then we'll take we'll study the object-oriented fundamentals, and based on that, how to draw the UML models, Unified Modeling Language diagrams. We'll also do a lot of exercise in writing on artifacts like the use cases, user stories, functional requirements documents, requirements traceability matrix, and many more other documentation, many more artifacts. We'll do a hands-on exercise for those, right? And many more things like, we'll teach you how to decompose a system, how to extract the business rules, how to manage the requirements, how to create an RTM, how to track a defect, and how to also do the baselining of the artifacts. That's all part of the configuration and change management. So then in module 3, we will basically touch base on concepts like quality assurance, the role of a BA in testing, what are the different methodologies used in testing, how to create the test cases, test plan, how to write the SQL, structured query language, some basic fundamentals. We won't go into the detail because as a BA you don't need to write them, but you should be able to understand them. We'll also give you a good understanding of what the service oriented architecture is, web service means, cloud computing, and I'll also explain the BPMN, which is very important for a good business analyst to know, because this is more at an advanced level, but I will basically give you a basic fundamental explanation of the BPMN. Now some of the training highlights is, all our courses are being taught by certified and experienced people. So as I said, I'm a certified CBAP. I'm a PMP and BPM practitioner, business process management. So I'm certified in all three. And I'm also, I have like more than 12 years of experience as a BA. So right now I'm working as a business analyst manager. Second thing is, the course is basically aligned to the IIBA and PMI's body of knowledge. So if you have taken the course, that means you have already read the PMI and IIBA's body of knowledge. So that is a good thing. So in future, if you want to decide and take a certification, so you have already read this. Now we can also help you, get the certification, but maybe for now you're just good. It's enough for you to just take the course and get the job, because in order to certify you need some experience too. We also keep updating our material very frequently. So every couple of months we want to make sure that we are updating it to reflect what's going on and what's in the demand. All our courses, as I said, the first module is more towards the theory and fundamentals concepts, but the second module is 100% focused towards the practical application of those concepts, the theory, which you will learn in module 1. So we'll give a lot of assignments, case studies for you to, how to apply those concepts and theory in the real world situations. And of course, if you take training from us, we will give you post-placement support at no cost. And also, if you want to go for certification, it's again, we'll provide free mentoring for that as well. Now, these are certain certifications, but not required right now. So for the next session, we start each session we start in the first week of month. Since this is from the last month, I need to update this slide, but so for this April we will be starting in 7th of April we'll be starting, and typically we do like Monday, Wednesday. On the weekdays we do a evening session, and then on the weekends we do 12 to 4, like 4-hour session. And now you can attend either online or you can be in person. Now we have a beautiful facility in McLean, Virginia, if you want to be in person, or else you can be online too. So approximately we take like 40 hours to train you. In addition to 40 hours of training, the assignments, reading material, case studies will be in addition to that, and also resume preparation, your interview, Q&A sessions are all included. And we have a good network. We have more than 100 vendors with whom we are partnered. So once we train you, now if you have a specific location preference, so that's very easy for us, because we know that, okay, which vendor is more active in which domain and which area of US, so we can source you there and you can be placed within like 2 to 3 weeks once you are ready to take the interviews. So we don't charge any money once you get once you are placed. So all the pay you get is all yours. We are just here to train you, help you prepare for the resume or interviews, place you, and then provide you the post-placement support. So once you get your job, we don't take any share, or we don't take any cut or commission from that. It's all yours. So just be like, mindful of that. And that's all for today's demo. I really thank you, all of you, for attending the demo. And once I'm done with this, we can have a Q&A session. Once again, thanks everyone for joining this session. And if you have any further questions, call me on 703-200-9921. Thank you and bye.